The Manhattan Project, which occurred during World War II, was a U.S. government-run exertion to research, manufacture, and afterward utilize a nuclear bomb, assembling a large number of researchers worldwide and occurring over numerous mainlands. The undertaking in the end brought about the development of the two nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How the undertaking began in 1939. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt got a letter from physicist Albert Einstein with a dire message. Physicists had as of late found that the component uranium could produce tremendous measures of vitality, enough maybe for a bomb. Einstein presumed that Hitler may as of now be attempting to store the element. World War II had scarcely started, and it would be 3 additional years prior to the United States got included. However, Einstein's letter prepared activity. The U.S. government started to marshal top physicists in a mystery venture. From the outset, their objective was uniquely to see if a nuclear bomb, a weapon tackling the vitality discharged by an iota split in two, was extremely conceivable, said Alex Wellerstein, a science history specialist at Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey. Be that as it may, by 1942, the objective was to assemble a bomb before Germany could. When the United States entered World War II, the undertaking was enrolling a huge number of researchers and regular citizens. Not long after, it was given the code name, the Manhattan Project. Atomic weapons examine started before U.S. association in World War II. Be that as it may, the Manhattan Project was not the same as the exploration extents that went before it, Wellerstein said. Prior research had been hypothetical. The objective of the Manhattan Project was to fabricate a bomb that could be utilized in the war. The venture didn't really begin until the fall of 1941, when engineer Vannevar Bush, who led atomic research as the leader of the U.S. government-supported Uranium Committee, persuaded Roosevelt that the nuclear bomb was conceivable and could be finished inside a year, Wellerstein said. Inside a year, General Leslie R. Forrest from the U.S. Armed Force Corps of Engineers was selected as the task's executive. That arrangement was a distinct advantage, Wellerstein said. Italo-American physicist Enrico Fermi, 1942. Italo-American physicist Enrico Fermi, 1942. Fermi was a splendid physicist and vital individual from the Manhattan Project. Picture credit: Ralph Morse, The Life Picture Collection by means of Getty. He was actually liable for ensuring it. The Manhattan Project was the main need during the war. It got all the financing, all the assets. He was persistent, Wellerstein said, on the off chance that he wasn't in control. At that point, it presumably wouldn't have completed. The Manhattan Project enrolled the assistance of thousands of researchers the nation over. Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard, physicists at the University of Chicago, were especially significant in the exertion, Wellerstein said. In case you're at these different destinations, you're making plutonium, you don't have the foggiest idea why, no doubt about it, Wellerstein said. At Los Alamos, you're making nuclear bombs, and that was something the U.S. government expected to stay quiet about. Los Alamos' remote area was essential in staying quiet about the reason for the venture. Questions investigated at Los Alamos included how to truly build a bomb, how to plan it, and where to assemble it. Extremely handy, physical stuff, Wellerstein said. To manufacture a bomb, researchers required a lot of shaky, radioactive uranium or plutonium. Uranium was simpler to get than plutonium. However, researchers imagined that plutonium may give a snappier course to building up the bomb, as per the Department of Energy. They chose to attempt both and constructed atomic reactors for every component: the Oak Ridge uranium reactor in eastern Tennessee and the Hanford plutonium reactor in Washington. It took a huge number of individuals to manufacture and work these offices: researchers, custodial staff, secretaries, and authoritative specialists. Before the finish of the war, more than 500,000 individuals had shipped away at the venture, Wellerstein said. That made a test. How would you utilize a huge number of individuals for an activity, at the same time figuring out how to stay quiet about that activity? The appropriate response was mystery urban communities. Urban communities were developed around the new reactors to house laborers and their families. Before the finish of the war, Oak Ridge bragged a populace 75,000 and Hanford a populace of 50,000, as per the Atomic Heritage Foundation. Be that as it may, these urban areas didn't show up on maps, and most specialists had no clue what they were really going after. As per Voices of the Manhattan Project, an oral history venture run by the Los Alamos Historical Society. In a strategy called compartmentalization, laborers were given data on a need-to-know premise, Wellerstein said. It was hard, he said. It was difficult to stay quiet about. They had holes and bits of gossip and spies. In spite of the fact that it was so testing to stay quiet about the venture, the presence of a nuclear bomb despite everything came as an amazement to almost everybody on the planet, including the individuals who had taken a shot at it, Wellerstein said. Utilizing the bomb by July 16, 1945, the main nuclear bomb, called the Gadget, was prepared. Around 150 miles outside of Los Alamos, in the remote Jornada del Muerto desert, analysts led the Trinity test, the main nuclear blast. In the years since its beginning, the focuses on the Manhattan Project had changed definitely. Never again was the objective of the task to race Germany to manufacture a bomb, Wellerstein said. It had for some time been certain that Germany had no clue it was in a race. Rather, the U.S. government's sights had gone to Japan. Not long after the Trinity test, two nuclear bombs, a uranium bomb called Young Man and a plutonium bomb called Chubby Man, were massed on Tinian Island in the South Pacific. An aircraft started directing dry runs to Japan. Weeks after the blast of the Gadget, two nuclear bombs were dropped on Japan. On August 6, 1945, Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima. Only 3 days after the fact, on August 9, Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. Around 110,000 individuals kicked the bucket in the underlying impacts, as per the Department of Energy. Short of what multi-week later, Japan gave up to the Allied powers, starting the finish of World War II. Consequence and end of the Manhattan Project. Was the Manhattan Project a triumph? It relies upon whom you inquire. A few researchers were disparaging of the heading the Manhattan Project took, Wellerstein said. These researchers preferred hustling against Germany to manufacture the bomb, however had second thoughts about really utilizing it. Szilard was one of those dissidents. Prior to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he had requested of Truman not to drop the bomb on a city. After the finish of the Manhattan Project, he quit considering material science and went into science. A few researchers who dealt with the bomb sincerely accepted that the risk of all-out pulverization would stop all war, Wellerstein said. By that measure, it was a disappointment, he said. The improvement of the nuclear bomb introduced an atomic weapons contest in the Cold War. All things considered, the Manhattan Project accomplished one objective: it finished World War II.